Hello and welcome to the Minimum Competence episode for Friday, May 30th, 2025. I'm your host for today, Andrew Leahy, a tax and technology attorney from New Jersey. On today's episode, Google's Antitrust Showdown, Trump's revived tariffs, his court-limiting tax bill, and Boeing's deal to dodge a 737 MAX criminal trial. Let's remember, keep your face always toward the sunshine, and shadows will fall behind you. And read today's legal news. On this day in legal history, May 30th, 2024, President Donald J. Trump was convicted on all 34 felony counts in a criminal trial related to a hush money scheme during the 2016 presidential campaign. The case centered on falsified business records used to conceal payments made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels, intended to silence her allegations of an affair in the run-up to the election. The charges, each tied to entries in the Trump Organization's internal ledger, were elevated to felonies on the basis that they were committed in furtherance of another crime, namely influencing the outcome of a federal election. The trial, held in New York State Supreme Court, marked an unprecedented legal moment in U.S. history, a then former president and presumptive candidate in the upcoming election being found guilty of criminal conduct. Prosecutors argued that Trump orchestrated the payments to suppress damaging information and maintain his electoral chances, while his defense claimed the case was politically motivated and the records reflected routine legal expenses. The conviction did not bar Trump from running for office again, as you well know, but it did raise questions, constitutional, electoral, and logistical, about the rule of law and the separation of powers. The verdict was reached by a jury of 12 New Yorkers after weeks of testimony from former aides, prosecutors, and key witnesses like Michael Cohen, Trump's one-time fixer. Trump's sentencing was scheduled for a future date, and appeals were expected. Reactions across the political spectrum were predictably polarized, with critics calling it accountability at last, while supporters denounced the trial as a miscarriage of justice. Legal scholars noted the symbolic weight of the decision in reaffirming that no one, including a then former president, is above the law. The U.S. Department of Justice and several states are wrapping up a major antitrust case against Google, with closing arguments scheduled for Friday. At issue is whether Google must sell its Chrome browser and stop default search engine deals with companies like Apple and wireless carriers, which the DOJ says stifles competition. These proposals follow a prior court finding that Google unlawfully monopolized online search and advertising markets. Judge Amit Mehta, who is presiding over the case, expects to issue a ruling by August. The DOJ is also pushing for Google to share its search data, which could benefit AI companies. OpenAI has expressed interest in purchasing Chrome if a divestiture occurs and noted that access to Google's search data would improve its AI responses. Google argues that the DOJ's proposed remedies overreach and would unfairly advantage competitors. The company has already taken some steps, such as loosening default search engine deals with phone manufacturers like Samsung. However, the government wants a full ban on payments that secure Google's search dominance on devices. A federal appeals court has temporarily reinstated President Trump's wide-ranging tariffs after a lower trade court ruled they exceeded presidential authority. The stay, issued by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, allows the tariffs targeting imports from most trading partners, and specifically Canada, Mexico, and China, to remain in effect while the appeals process unfolds. The plaintiffs and the government must submit legal arguments by early June. The U.S. Court of International Trade previously found that Trump misused the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, which is designed for national emergencies, not trade disputes. The panel emphasized that Congress, not the president, holds constitutional power to impose tariffs. Trump and his administration remain defiant, vowing to pursue alternative legal pathways if needed. Trump criticized the ruling publicly, warning it could weaken presidential power and harm national interests. Financial markets responded cautiously, factoring in the likelihood of a drawn-out legal process. Some companies, like small businesses represented by the Liberty Justice Center, argue the tariffs threaten their survival due to disrupted supply chains. Broader economic impacts include $34 billion in losses and stalled negotiations with key partners. Notably, separate national security-based tariffs on steel, aluminum, and cars remain unaffected. Trump's latest tax and spending bill, dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, includes a provision that could significantly limit federal courts' power to enforce contempt orders against the government. The measure, buried in the 1,100-page bill, would block courts from enforcing contempt if plaintiffs did not post a monetary bond when seeking an injunction, a practice rarely required in lawsuits against the government. The provision applies retroactively and would affect both lower courts and the Supreme Court. Critics say it could effectively prevent courts from holding government officials accountable for ignoring judicial orders, as most past injunctions didn't involve posted bonds. While the administration says the measure is aimed at deterring frivolous lawsuits, legal experts warn it undermines judicial authority and incentivizes non-compliance. This change comes after a Trump administration memo encouraged agencies to request bonds in litigation. Judges have previously flagged possible defiance of court orders by administration officials, but have stopped short of issuing contempt rulings. In one recent case over tariffs, a judge set a bond of just $100, overruling a higher request by the government. The House narrowly passed the bill without any Democratic support. It now moves to the Senate, where some Republicans have expressed intentions to amend it. A group of House Democrats has already called for the contempt provision to be removed, arguing it would render courts ineffective in enforcing lawful orders. The U.S. Justice Department has asked a judge to dismiss the criminal fraud charge against Boeing tied to two deadly 737 MAX crashes that killed 346 people, following a new agreement with the company. Under the deal, Boeing avoids a felony conviction but will pay an additional $444.5 million into a victims' compensation fund and a $243.6 million fine, bringing the total to $1.1 billion. The sum includes investments in safety, compliance, and quality enhancements. This resolution has drawn strong criticism from families of crash victims and some lawmakers who argue that Boeing should face trial. While most families have settled civil lawsuits and received billions in compensation, several legal representatives are planning to challenge the agreement. The Justice Department defended the deal, stating it ensures accountability and public benefit while avoiding a potentially uncertain trial outcome. As part of the agreement, Boeing's board must meet with victims' families, and the company will hire a compliance consultant instead of facing court-appointed oversight. The deal halts a planned June 23rd trial over Boeing's alleged deception of U.S. regulators regarding a key flight control system implicated in the crashes. And with that, and as always, I thank you so much for listening to Minimum Competence, your daily news podcast for lawyers. If you're looking for more than Minimum Competence, links to further reading on all the topics touched on today are in the show notes. And reviews go a long way towards helping new listeners to find our show. If you have a moment, leave a rating or review on your podcast player. We'd sure appreciate it. And if you know someone that might be interested in the story we cover, consider sending them the episode. But remember, nothing here should be construed as legal advice because it is certainly not that. Minimum Competence is available at minimumcomp.com and wherever it is you get your finely crafted podcasts. If you haven't checked out the website in a while, give it a look. There are complete transcripts and resources for each episode and its corresponding segments, as well as an opportunity to receive new episodes in email, newsletter, form. We'll see you back here tomorrow, and until then, note, we like to close out the week of shows with a featured musical piece that will make these Friday episodes seem especially long. We hope you'll stick it out and enjoy the featured piece, but if music, and specifically classical music, isn't your bag, we get it. Our mouth sounds unrelated to the week's closing theme ends here. This week's closing theme brings us to one of the towering figures of classical music, Joseph Haydn. Born in 1732 and known as the father of the symphony and the father of the string quartet, Haydn's influence shaped the musical landscape of his time and set the foundation for generations of composers to come, including his younger contemporaries Mozart and Beethoven. Though widely celebrated for his symphonic and chamber works, Haydn also made remarkable contributions to keyboard music, works that showcase both his wit and structural innovation. Our selection is the first movement, Vivace, from his keyboard concerto in D major, arguably his most famous and frequently performed keyboard concerto. Composed in the mid-1770s, this piece bursts with energy and clarity, reflecting Haydn's mature style. The Vivace movement is bright, spirited, and rhythmically engaging, with a dialogue between soloist and orchestra that feels playful, yet assured. What makes this concerto particularly special is its balance of accessibility and sophistication. The melodies are immediately appealing, but the musical craftsmanship runs deep. Complex harmonic turns, sparkling ornamentation, and a joyful momentum that never wanes. In the classical tradition, this was written for the harpsichord or forte piano, but it's often performed on modern piano today, bringing a different resonance and brilliance to the sound. As we close the week, Haydn's Vivace offers a fitting send-off, lively, inventive, and rooted in a composer who, even 2 centuries later, continues to surprise and delight. Without further ado, Joseph Haydn's Vivace, keyboard concerto in D major. Enjoy.
you.